Welcome to the Out on a Limb podcast. We are all interconnected to a greater web of consciousness. Our aim is to open your mind to a new world through having open-minded discussions about what we perceive our reality to be.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Out on a Limb podcast with your hosts Samantha, Allison, and Will.
Hello.
Where it's always fun. And
where it's always fun and
fun with fear. Fun with fear. Does that sound like an oxymoron?
I'm confused.
Should fun and fear be in the same sentence?
Well, if you're masochistic, sure.
We're going to change your mind about that.
Are we?
Okay.
We are.
I'm here to learn.
I tell you, one of the things that I wrote in The Journey Within, because it was so critical to, I think, our evolutionary journey, is to operate with courage.
Yeah.
So I really try to encourage people to step out of fear or to work in spite of fear, move in spite of fear for the potential and the possibilities that are right on the other side of that fear barrier.
Okay.
Tell me about that. What do y'all think about that?
What if, like, in my previous life, my military career, what if fear is what you use to keep yourself, as they would say in the movies, frosty, keep you on point.
Safe, right, yeah.
I mean, that's having fun with fear because you keep yourself not in like a fear state where you're like cringing, but
alert.
But alert. You're using what you know what's going to come, and your humanness is a bit fearful of what's to come, but you use that to be heightened.
Yes, and that's the point. Fear has a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We don't want to get rid of fear altogether. It had an evolutionary purpose, right?
Yes.
Like running from the dinosaurs.
Yeah.
Or being alert to dangers in your environment way back.
Yeah.
And it still does. You still need to be careful walking down a dark street at night, for example, or something, and be aware of your surroundings. Have a little bit of heightened awareness, like you said, fear.
I'm just testing the energy between the idea of fear versus being fearful.
Right, because there's a thin line there. Uh-huh. Yeah, no, I'm reading you.
My mom is fearful. She doesn't live in fear. She's fearful. Like, it is a conditional state where, to me, fear can be used in a positive way. But when you're fearful, there ain't nothing positive about that.
Well, it's paralyzing.
Yeah.
Right.
Being fearful is paralyzing, but having an awareness of fear and how to understand it, that's where you keep yourself, in an awareness state. You keep yourself in a place where you're a bit more observational of your surroundings.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this is completely on track or not. I have no idea because she's the one driving this ship.
We have no track. Okay.
No track here.
No track.
But I'm just, I'm thinking about how I've used fear and how I've had fear in my life, and there's been a number of times where, knowing what I was going into, I had a bit of, apprehension, which would be fear because I'm, heightened in that. And I'm like, I don't know if we should be doing this, but this is what we've got to do, and knowing the consequences. So I'm fearful that, I'm in fear that, this could go in a really bad direction. But I never was fearful that something tragic was going to happen. That was always out of my mindset. So now, if I have to move forward into what I'm doing now and talk about fear, I mean, maybe early on there was a bit of fear there, or being fearful. That's probably the better way to say it. Being fearful of what people were going to say, how people were going to look at me, people think about me, and that's where in what I'm doing, I could have easily crippled myself by staying in that fearful state of what are people going to think of me or perceive me of, or that kind of thing. So, that kind of thing.
So in my spiritual life coaching side of things, we talk about fear as being false evidence appearing real. And with that in mind, when I've channeled the multidimensional beings, BB, one of the favorite things that they tend to say to people who are expressing like resistance and, blocks that would lead them into moving forward in their life. She said a number of ways that fear is a false projection of the future. And what she can't understand with humans is why, if you're going to do a false projection of the future, would you project something negative instead of something positive?
Ew,
Right.
perfect.
Yeah, she
Perfect.
nails it.
Wow.
Such a great concept.
And so,
Right.
and like, it's just this sort of, I don't understand humans in this, regard. But, there's, I don't know, I'm thinking of all the different, ways you can take this conversation with fear and so forth. Because I look at it as like, it's definitely limited me in some areas of my life. But there's also that part when you face the fear that you have that, when you talk about fun with fear, you get that, you wouldn't have the exhilaration
Yes.
if there wasn't that hesitancy of, danger or what will people think or whatever. And then you just go, screw it, and you go for it.
Yep.
I don't know.
So it's
very
this fine line between kind of fear and excitement, because it's almost the same vibration in your body.
Yeah.
Fear and excitement. So I liken it to being on a roller coaster. It's scary as heck, but it's exhilarating. Like you said, it's exhilarating and it's fun. And once you get down that first curve, you're just so excited that you did it. So it's about this little bit of the hesitation, the resistance, the nerves. But fear is also such a big word.
It is. I'm sitting here going, it encompasses
a lot of different
like
mini
there's-
feelings.
Yeah.
But it also, and then you got to throw into the mix the whole, what's the scale of frequency? What's the,
Where it is on the scale of
so it's
consciousness.
right. It's
pretty low.
It's very, very low. So
Yeah.
so you got to throw that kind of in the mix too. Is if we're
Because
saying
true debilitating fear,
Yes.
this paralysis,
Yes.
that is very low.
yes, and
Yes.
so but if we're saying that we've got to kind of work with fear and understand fear and all that, some people are going to say, well, that means I'm lowering my vibration to
No.
to work in that fear zone or
I think it's
fear zone.
I think it's impossible to get rid of fear entirely. It's an emotion that we're going to experience as a human being.
Yeah.
Because of the ego
Yeah.
making sure that you're going to be safe. You're not going to be excluded from the herd.
Right.
You're not going to be,
Oh, okay.
But
All right.
being
So
afraid
it's part of that.
Yeah.
or
yeah,
nervous
okay.
every now and then is not putting you down into that low vibration unless you're constantly living there, like perhaps your mom or
then-
other people.
Then you're in anxiety, in a state
Yeah.
of anxiety when
Right.
you allow fear to creep in and you're,
Fear's the catalyst to bring on all the other, I don't know if this is the right word, but psychosomatic type of, conditions. Like,
not just,
Psychosomatic is that you're imagining it, I think, isn't that?
that's more of a,
like I said, I'm not an
a
expert.
mental, because I'm thinking there's also like all the phobias.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right.
And phobias aren't psychosomatic affects the body, whereas phobias are just in your mind fears.
Good point. Good point.
But like nerves.
Say point Samantha in the comments.
Right.
No,
Yay. But even
because we struggle through this.
Right. I know. This is where we need Judy Buchanan sitting here because that's like her.
oh
that's
my
her thing.
goodness, yeah. But even if you're going to give a speech or you're going to give a talk or you're going to do something on YouTube or whatever you're going to do, get in front of people. And you have a little bit of nerves, butterflies. That's
Yeah.
understandable.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
is
yeah.
a physiological reaction that's really kind of hard to get rid of, I guess, unless you're just a natural and you've done this so many times
1,000
that you
times,
just
yeah.
don't have the butterflies anymore. And we're not talking about getting rid of that necessarily. And that's not what's going to hold your vibration down into that fear level. But what the kind of fear that I wanted to address and talk about is really this fear that holds you back from living your best life, living out what you came here to do,
okay.
being able to awaken and evolve into the beautiful being that you are here to be, to contribute to humanity, whether it's to humanity's awakening or just to be who you are in the world because you're important. And so if you let these fears inhibit you from being your true self, your authentic self, doing what you want to do, because of fear of what somebody's going to say or fear of failure or whatever
Right.
it is, then it's really debilitating and it's impacting the entire world because you're not able to truly give your gifts, the gift of you,
No pressure, people.
Yeah, none whatsoever.
None.
But it doesn't mean that everybody's meant to, I don't know, write a book or be on stage or any of that. It's just the fact, if you want to be whatever it is you want to be or do, and you're preventing yourself from doing that because of fear of, again, what your parents think you should study in college, or what your neighbor's going to think of you if you do such and such, or
I mean, even the smallest bit of that, the self-imposed fear of what if. That, I mean, really, I think that's what it comes down to, is the self-imposed aspect of what if this goes wrong. Oh, and it's usually, whenever you throw a what if in there, it's usually, you're what ifing things on the negative side. You're
like
never,
BB said.
right,
Yeah.
you're never what ifing things for the positive. Ever.
What if I was a great success, or
Right.
what if people loved me?
What if I was a
or
millionaire?
What if
Like,
whatever. Right.
That's what you have. That's what you. What if you're sitting around the bar and having a few drinks? What if I had to?
Yeah.
But normally we're what ifing ourselves to death. Of our own path forward, because of our. And I'll take this all the way back to our conditioning of a child. Right?
Yes, of course.
So that's where that first little seed of fear starts to kick in, because we're fearful that we just did something and now we're chastised for it, or we've just said this and we're this, and so then that seed continues, and then you might have a completely 3D mundane normal muggle life, and then all of a sudden you have your awakening. There's that word, right? You have your awakening, and then you start to do these things that are exactly in tune with who you are, but yet that seed is still there saying, but what if? What if she or he doesn't like what you're saying? What if? And that's where the fear starts to really grow.
Right. And bringing this back to sort of my experience in the Christian church, is that's where I feel so many people stunted in their growth, because, in theory, if you're a Christian, you really love God, you love Jesus, you love the angels, whatever it is, and you want to have a strong relationship with those divine beings. And yet, so many Christians are told they can't, or if you are hearing from God, that's probably not God, it's probably Satan, or it's a devil, or
Lots
it's
of rules.
all of these things that are bad. Like, there are so many churches that don't want you to have psychic information or mediumship with loved ones around you and all of that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And so they've created this fear perspective such that we inhibit ourselves. And what that does, unfortunately, is it prevents you from having your own direct connection with those divine beings. So you instead go through the pastor. I can only talk to Jesus through the pastor and what he tells me, or through the Bible, or through some other third party, rather than having a direct relationship. And that is sad to me, that people are being prevented from, or preventing themselves from having their own unique direct experience in whatever area it is, whether it's the Christian church or some other realm, but because of fear.
Well, it plays out also with the whole metaphysical scene, because people feel like, it's fun to go to a psychic or, a channeler or a medium, all of that's it can be fun to do. I mean, there's times that like most of the people that find me or find you, they're really like, they can't see the forest for the trees. So they really need that secondary help. But there's a lot of people that just kind of like, they want to go, and they already, like, you'll tell them something and they're like, yeah, I was already feeling that. It's like, they just don't trust themselves. They're fearful that they're going to make a wrong choice.
Right.
And like, I tell people, they'll say, well, but am I taking the right path? And I'm like, your path is what you're on. You can't go off of it, because it's whatever you're blazing through
Right.
is your path. You're making
Right.
it up as you go. And and I'm like, yeah, they're milestones, but there's not like you got to go left or right to get to that milestone. It's going to just plop itself right in front of
It's
you
gonna be
when
there.
it's time. So, but anyway, so that fear that they can't trust their own inner voice, or that they can only get legit information through someone who's channeling or, intuitive work and stuff. And so like, that's the first thing that I typically do in an appointment before I answer people's questions. And I'm like, I'm like, we're going to get to your question, I promise you. But first I want you to do this. And I teach them to, close their eyes and feel the expansion and contraction because I'm trying to get them to develop that trust within themselves to alleviate the fear that, that they might lead themselves astray.
Yes.
But sometimes there is the whole, like, it's too big of an issue and you just need someone to help you parse it out. And you need it to not be a friend or a family member. I get that.
So cultivating courage, kind of the opposite of fear.
Yeah.
Is what I encourage people to do, because a lot of times our fears are not even our own.
Yeah.
So we are so conditioned, as you said, from childhood
Or anything.
to start listening to other people's perspective. So if somebody else is afraid of, like your parents are afraid of snakes, so now you're afraid of snakes because you've seen your parents react to that.
You don't know why you're afraid of snakes.
You've not even had your own experience.
Right.
And then you get to school and your teachers might, condition you to be afraid of something else, or your pastor or your coach or whoever it is, the adults, anybody outside, or even the TV outside of yourself, the news.
No, they would never do that.
Right. So one of the things that I suggest that people do is to sit with their fears or their inhibitions and ask, is this even mine? And if so, where did it come from?
Right.
Have I had my own direct experience with this thing? And this is important also with people, and I think we've talked about this before, that's why we don't recommend particular channelers all the time. We'll tell you, we talk about them sometimes, and we tell you to use your own discernment, what resonates with you. So just because so-and-so doesn't like that person does not mean you shouldn't, that you need to adopt that same feeling and not like that person either.
I was just going to say that word that word is what comes around all the time.
Discernment.
Discernment. It comes down. It really, that's what it comes down to. I mean, it's if you are feeling led in so many different directions and you are, you're relying on too much information from too many people, you're muting your ability to discern really your path. Because what you're doing is you're painting your path with everybody else's knowledge versus your own understanding of where you need to go. That does not mean you have to negate everything that everybody else has said. It's just, listening to self, and I think that's what you were getting at, is encouraging others to really kind of listen to their inner guidance and have discernment of what's in front of them.
And then have the courage to act on it.
Yeah.
Have the courage to, once you know and you have that connection and you get the aha, yes, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, then have the courage to step forward and actually do that. And what you find is that the more you do that, the more liberating it is, and it's freeing and it's exciting, and the external noise, the external stuff tends to be muted when you're so focused on your own path that the rest just, you don't even care anymore. And so it inevitably becomes easier.
I'm going to add something else into it because that is so beautiful, except if your programming, your belief system is so strong that you can't get down to that, then there's tools out there. You've got a blockage.
I was just going to, go ahead.
So, there's this thing called the belief tree where, you start off with, if this were true, I believe this, or, what would I have to believe about myself is true? Or, there's several different ways you can do it. But it's interesting because you'll keep saying, well, if I do this, I might fail. Okay, so what's wrong with if I fail?
Right.
Well, if I fail, I'm going to look like a fool. And you keep going through this process where, you describe all this stuff until you get to the point where you go to an external perspective. Well, I saw, and it's like, well, where did this start? Well, I saw my father fail. And then it's like, aha,
There
okay.
we go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Now we
And
got a place to
so-
jump off. Yeah.
Yeah.
kind
And
of like
then it's
root
like, you're not
cause.
your father.
Root cause analysis.
Yeah, exactly.
The 5 whys.
So
Yeah.
it's so if you're finding that you want to do this, you can't understand why you're stuck. It's like, take yourself through this process,
Yeah.
or have have a friend do it, or come to someone like me, but get someone outside of yourself if you can't do it to yourself, because you got to hold your feet to the fire.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can't see the forest for the trees. And so it helps just to have that other person who's going to say, ask you those
Yeah.
questions so that you're just riffing off the top of your head. Or
Yes.
if you do tapping and you don't have to do it properly, it's just any kind of, just tapping, it's taking your mind off of it so you can throw that next question out there and just keep writing it down as you tap through, and you'll be amazed at what you come up
Wow.
with. But
Yeah,
it's also
I often do that with clients, but they have to answer like this. Just
Yes,
give me your first
exactly.
answer till we get down
Yeah,
to the root.
yeah, and we have had clients too that I think they're in their sessions in their hello, I can't get words out. Their higher self channelings that have asked, but I don't hear. I don't hear that from my guides. I don't hear that direction from my guides. So how do I listen for that, or what do I do to get that going? And what you're saying is there are methods to get that process flowing and not to be. And see, I think that's what happens is many of us, out there that, or many of you out there, get to a point at which you hear everybody else saying, well, my guides have told me this.
I was
and my
about to
guides
say
have,
that.
Right. My guides have said this to me, and this is where I should be doing this, and this is what I should be doing that. And yet you're over there twiddling your thumbs going, but I don't hear anything from my
We
guides.
don't say squat.
Right. And I will be the first to admit, I'm not in a constant conversation with my guides, my team, or any other energetic entity out there. They come in when they know that I'm sitting here ready for a channeling and they're going to drop in. Or if there is some sort of like aha moment that I need to understand or know, they're not going to give me words. They're going to light my body up as if I just stuck my finger in the electrical socket. I mean, I just get energetically charged, and then I have to realize that's my signal to stop, take a second and go, all right, thank you. I don't know what that was, but I'm sure at some point I'm going to know exactly what that is because it's meant for me. But I don't go any further than that and try to decipher what it is because frankly, right then and there isn't meant to do that. That's how Reiki for Vets came about. That's how many of the different things came about. That's how we just talked about this recent book, the Awakening Stories. You brought the idea, we started talking about, and I just got lit up. And I'm like, we're on to something.
Yeah,
I
that
know
thing that excites you the most.
Right,
yeah.
exactly.
But then acting on that is what I really want to focus on is
Yeah.
acting on that in spite of what your mind might say could happen or what
Right.
your neighbor says or whatever.
Well, I
wanted to
can't
get back
do
to
those
something
things.
else.
Okay, so that's the courage of acting on. You
Right.
get that impulse.
Yes.
You get that aha moment, but yet you don't know what it is, but you know you need to be moving in some direction, and you just.
But you
where
drag
do
your feet because
right.
you're nervous or whatever. But you were talking about what's the worst that can happen. So I had this experience. I'm not going to give it exactly away, but there's something big that may happen in my life. And I'm getting kind of excited about it, about the
And
possibility.
yes, I
right?
know exactly what this is.
I know what it is too.
Okay.
So anyway,
She's told
I
everybody.
thought-
No,
Just so the audience knows that we are in on the secret, but.
I thought I'm going
yeah.
to ask the collective. So we did a private channeling the other day, and one of the questions was, is this the timeline that I'm currently on where this is going to manifest for me?
Right.
They're so funny. They came back and they said, well, what would you like us to say? That there's an 80% chance yes, and there's a 20% chance no, that's the timeline you're on? Because there's always multiple timelines.
Thank God I'm out. Thank God I'm out when this happens.
Right? And I'm thinking in my head as they're talking, yeah, that's what I'd like you to do.
Can you give me some concrete proof?
They said, because if we do that, then what you're going to do is you're going to focus on the 20% that it might not happen. They said, you are already enjoying, and this goes back to your Esther Hicks stuff, you're already enjoying the experience of the potential. And it's already opened up these other potentials. And it's been so expansive for you to think and dream about this and see yourself doing that and whatever. And that's already opened up, even if you weren't to get it, this thing that you want, it's opening up all of these other doorways that you never even saw because you had tunnel vision in this way, right? Other potentials. And so they said, so dream and think as if it was happening and if it were going to happen until it doesn't, if it doesn't. And they said, what's the worst that can happen? And so I said, well, I would be very disappointed. And we tend not to want to get our hopes up because then we're disappointed. And they said, in your human physicality, you might be disappointed for a few minutes, but then you're going to understand that no matter what happens, you're on your path. Yeah. And I got to thinking that the whole point is to be in the now moment where all of the potentials exist. The point is not to get what you think you want. Like you said with Esther Hicks, it's about the feelings that come up as if you were already in that, because that is the zone of potentiality where the power is, right?
Exactly. In the now, yeah.
That is where the power is, not in the getting of the thing, because once you have that thing, you're not in the zone of potentiality anymore. You have what you think you wanted. And it came to me in a clear way, where used to I'd listen to Esther Hicks, or Joe Dispenza talks about this a lot, about sitting there in that feeling. And I realized sitting in that feeling is not about manifesting it. It's about sitting in the feeling of potentiality, because that's where the power is. And that it's actually limiting by the time you get to what you think you want.
You know,
Isn't that fascinating?
No, it completely is. I'm sitting here thinking, okay, so I do real estate as another aspect of my life. And it's a tough one though. Like I had a deal in my hands, and, nudging me to encourage a client to do something, but you can't. You got to let them do what they're going to do, but knowing they're going to miss it if they don't do this, but you got to let them do what you ask. And if they say is what they're going to do, there was $36,000 on the line. And I'm telling you what, I milked that. I felt that the potential of 36,000 in my account.
It was there.
I was having so much fun. And when he didn't get it, I let myself go, well, shit. And
there's the momentary human disappointment, of course.
because that would have been fun.
Sure.
But it's like, okay, if that worked then, it could happen again, and it could go through, So I always look at, I live vicariously through other people at times, because it's like, okay, if somebody wins the lottery, that means it's possible. You can win the lottery, And it's not, for me, it's not leaving hope out there. It's more, I don't like using the word hope, because it's not like this wistful sort of thing. It's just, there's a full potential of any number of things occurring, both good and bad. I focus on the good, because that's much more fun to be in that space. And then just let it go and see what's going to happen. I mean, granted, okay, I got a little bit of a leg up on most people, because I'm Aries. I'm the baby sign. And for me, like I've said before, every day's freaking Christmas. I know something exciting is going to happen. It's like I'm getting ready to come up here, and I'm like, oh, I get to talk to these guys. This will be so much fun. And this is, I got a 2-hour road trip to get up here, 2 hours to get back, But none of that matters, because I'm excited. And I live this way. Yeah. So I have an advantage, I understand. But still, it's so much more fun to sit there and go, and I talked to my husband about this. I'm like, okay, so let's talk about a cruise. Like, what would be most fun to do? And I just see him, he goes,
he tenses up.
Yeah, and he is just like, oh, dear God. And if I give her any nod, she's going to run with it. And I'm like, you know what? Until you hand me the card, I can't, just go book the trip. So I'm like, I just want to talk about the potential, because the potential starts to bring in everything else.
Yes.
So he's much better about that now, but still, there's still that sort of, you want something I can't provide. And I'm like, you don't have to. I just want to talk about it. And I know so many people who are, you're the, I was about to say airy fairy person. You're the airy light person. I can't remember how Dave Ramsey says it. The one that's just doesn't get money, which is me. I do not understand how money works. It's a bizarre concept. And my husband totally is rooted in it and gets it and, despises it and all this kind of stuff. And so for anyone who's on, this light side and confused side of money, we just want to talk about potential of stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's everything's possible.
The grand potential of it. Exactly.
Yeah. And I'm telling you guys, you just got to go there and let yourself do it, because you're not going to get yourself budging forward if you sit there and go, well, can't do this, can't do that.
Right.
And I'm not going to think about it.
Or afraid to do these things.
Exactly.
Well, okay. So there is, there are mentors, big time, well-known mentors out there that sit there and encourage their people, hey, plan to come to this event. You don't know how you're going to get here, but just plan. Just
Sure.
go ahead and put money down on a ticket. You don't have the rest of the money for it. Go for it. And, they'll take that one person who everything worked right for and say, see, this person did it.
Right.
Okay. But for the people who are sitting there,
Yeah.
like not being able to get their deposits back and, and kind of going, I couldn't find the little extra thing, it's kind of like, well, you didn't know this secret sauce or you didn't know
Right,
that.
right.
Chances are they were believing more in what that mentor was saying than
their
in
own guidance.
Yeah, your own personal guidance because
Yeah. So we're not talking about overriding your guidance or your common sense.
no, I mean,
or that kind of stuff. But the thing is, we've kind of touched on this in a different, let's bring it around. So if you are feeling that internal light up, that excitement, that enthusiasm, you know what you're supposed to do, whatever that is on your mission, and you're afraid to step forward in that mission in spite of the confirmation you're getting, the vibrations, the knowing, the whatever, if you're still afraid to move forward, then you're doing yourself and the world a disservice because the world deserves the beautiful gifts that you have to give in whatever that looks like.
Right.
So we're not talking about stretching out in crazy areas that you have no idea what you're doing. We're talking about following your path, the divine contract that you came here
But it
to.
also doesn't mean you have to.
enact.
But it doesn't. If you're getting these intuitive guidances, is that a word? And that's the path you're supposed to be moving down, and yet you're in a relatively decent job. But then you also have a mortgage, and you have kids, and you have everything else. That's where the whole thing of fear comes in. Is like, but I know I'm supposed to be doing this, but yet I have to provide for all of this. It doesn't mean you just bite it off and just jump into it.
or quit your job.
it's with integrity.
Right. And you just
everything.
take one little bite at it and see how that feels. Then you take another little bite and see how that feels. And you grow into it. You don't just jump off and give up everything else to do what you feel is the path, because you're still here to have this human experience. You're still here to have the human struggles. So you can alleviate some of those struggles by taking little chunks of those things that are lighting you up. They'll take some of that fear away. They'll take some of that pain away. They'll take some of that away if you do it, I'll say manageably, if that makes sense. The universe isn't going to,
Isn't that saying, God helps those who help themselves?
Yeah,
and
sure.
they always say you have to take that first step.
Yeah.
And then things, because if you're meant to be in a certain place at a certain time,
Yep.
believe me, your life everything that's
Yeah.
holding you
Everything
back
will move away.
crumble.
Yeah.
It will crumble. And
Yep.
then you're meant to, the harder you find your life right now, it's generally look around you.
Yep.
Things have been nudging you to leave, but fear has made you stay. And, it's just going to get worse and worse because you're not where you need to be. And the universe is going to have to push you like a little bird out of the nest.
the deeper you dig your heels in, the harder it is for the universe to move you. And,
But the universe wins in the end.
Yeah.
So it's better to give up the struggle early on when the struggles are fairly minor than wait until they really kick you in the pants.
It comes down to, what in that are you fearful of? Are you fearful of the first step? Are you fearful of where it might take you, the potential of where it might take you? Are you fearful of what others are going to think of you? Are you
I think that's a big one.
Right. So
sure.
There's a whole inventory of what you can be fearful of, and write all those down, and put those down on paper so they're sitting in front of you, and then draw a line through each one of them as you work yourself through that. As you take that first bite and you say, well, you know what? I'm not fearful of what anybody's going to say of me, because here's what just happened. And I successfully overcame that. And you'll see that you can work through that list. And that's also going to build confidence. It's also going to build this strength in you that you can really overcome.
It does build strength.
Yeah. And achieve anything that's in front of you.
I think it was Elizabeth Gilbert in Big Magic, which is a fantastic book. And I think it was her that spoke about this metaphor of not, again, getting rid of fear, because I don't think we can ever truly get rid of all fear, but not letting it drive your car, letting it sit in the back seat. Fear's not going to drive my bus.
It's a backseat driver.
It needs to sit in the back.
Right?
and it can come if it needs to.
Can we put it in the trunk?
But it's not going to drive my bus. In other words, don't let it overtake your life such that you don't do the things
Right.
that you know you're divinely called to do,
Yeah.
or the things that light you up, or that you want to have fun in your life. Let it ride in the back, but act in spite of it.
Yep.
Act courageously in spite of it. The other idea, and I have this on my website as my tagline I have for years,
Yeah.
is, and you've seen love versus fear, love over fear.
Faith over fear.
Well, there's a love
Yes.
with a, love is greater than fear. Have you ever seen that sign? Love is greater than fear. But they're on opposite ends. They don't initially sound
coexist.
like it. You think it might be love and hate, but it's love and fear. In other words, fear cannot exist when love is present.
Right.
And so I remind myself of this because it's really easy to get into that loving state. You just drop into your heart. And if you're having a disagreement with somebody and you're afraid to, again, have that authentic conversation, drop into your heart, love the person, project that love, and the fear will dissipate because it cannot exist in the same frequency as love. So if you are feeling fear that is difficult to get past, put yourself in a state of love.
Yeah.
So you're looking at bringing in love rather than getting rid of fear. Does that make sense? So yeah, we're not trying to diminish the fear as much as we are trying to expand the love.
That's a good way to put it.
Yes. Yes. Fear is necessary.
Ba-dum-bum. Boom, we're done.
That's
Whoa,
all I got
wow,
to
that's a
say
wrap?
about
Well, that's a short one. No, and I think one thing that keeps kind of circling back into my head is, because I'm sure there's plenty of you out there that are listening that going that, well, this, I'm being called to do all this work, and I'm being called to do all these things, and you look around and you see others and how easy it seems for them. Well, you're not looking at the behind the scenes. You're seeing what they're presenting, out on YouTube or out on TikTok or out on Facebook or out on social media, or even at some of the events they might put on. You're only seeing that small portion of
which
it.
is carefully cultivated.
Exactly.
It's marketing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And not all practitioners have the luxury of being self-sustaining, even prior to their awakening, meaning, they're wealthy enough where they can just step away from whatever they're doing and just walk into something new, right? That's maybe 1% of the population that can do that. For the rest of us, we have to grind. We have to be out there, digging it and doing it.
But we can't look at it like grinding.
but
it's more like,
Well, but it's
the process.
it's not your primary job.
Right.
It's your,
Right. There's things that go along with it. And when you prioritize it, like, well, what do I prioritize first? Do I prioritize my job that brings in my income and all that? Or do I prioritize the things in my life that really bring me joy and love and keep me out of the fear? You prioritize that first, and you allow the other stuff, the job that brings you the income, to be secondary, and that's what sustains you in doing what you're here to do until the point at which you
Right.
can do it.
But what I want to clarify is that we're giving the impression that our daytime jobs, our muggle jobs, our 3D jobs are not necessarily what we're here to do,
No,
or that
yeah,
we
right.
can't
You're absolutely
be
right,
the
yes.
divine
I know
within
where you're
that
going, yes.
space.
You're right.
Because I don't agree that everybody who awakens is supposed to drop their day job and start working in the metaphysical. I don't think that's
No, 'cause we're here
accurate
to
at
be
all.
Human, yeah.
We're here to be human, and you're also being your divine self within that organization, whatever that is. And you're impacting all kinds of people in that organization that you would not have been impacting if you're just,
But the
you
first-
quit your job and stay home.
But the first inclination is for somebody that has such a profound awakening.
Oh, they got to drop everything
course.
and go for it. Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
I just scored a touchdown. I gotta go get on the major leagues
And because
now.
it lights you up and it's in your heart space and it resonates with
Right.
you, and you want to do that all the time because it's fun and it's rewarding and fulfilling, of course.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean your job can't be the same. I don't think that some people are just in the wrong job, and maybe you do need a change of scenery and environment, and you can do that.
But when you start changing your perspective, when you start changing the way stepping out of fear, and you're creating love around you, you're creating that space around you, that is then ever changing in the
Yes.
environment that you're in.
Yes.
Ooh.
So you're bringing your best self into that job, and the job changes, and the interactions change.
And that, so Remember what I told you last night, the statement that I had popped in my head the other early morning?
No.
So
Not the dream.
not the
words
dream
are-
tonight. No, not that. So I woke up, I don't know, a couple nights ago, and I had this phrase, and I wanted to create an AA image around it, but I just couldn't get it to work right.
You should have called it Ed. Ed
Right, our friend Ed.
I know, right? I thought about it, but it's don't be the chameleon in your environment. Become the environment. Right. So it's right. You're there to be the environment of change. You're there to affect the change of others around you and allow them to change in that environment. Right. So if
Be
you're
the environment,
right,
yeah.
you be the environment. Don't be the chameleon that just blends into the workforce or blends into whatever. Be the one
That's
that becomes.
soul-crushing.
Right, become the environment that you end up bringing light into that space. You bring your essence into that space. You bring your divine soul into that space and allow others to change around you.
You can do a TikTok on that.
I might.
What was that? There is a meme or a phrase
I might do that. I don't know.
Yeah.
that somebody famous said that's when you change within, everything around you changes or something like that.
But the collective says that all the time. Yeah,
It always starts with self. It always starts inside.
yeah.
But it's, so going back to what you're saying, the whole idea is, that change happens within, and then you want to express it, but you're fearful about what everyone's going to say. But you've got to play around with it. You've got to, release to it and move back in that space of that profound awe and of what you experienced that brought you to that moment of going, do I express myself? It's not that you got to go around and hand everyone daisies and, and crystals
Sing Kumbaya.
yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
It's just, you've unlocked the secret to something and now let it shine through you.
Right.
And like, that's, I don't know. If you go right out there and tell everybody, like you're saying, look what I've discovered. Well, yeah, you might, you're now imposing upon people. So if you sit there and you're fearful that people might not be accepting, it's because you're being polarizing
Right.
to people who aren't ready or prepared for
Right.
any of this. So, it's to embody it.
And finding your pace and all of
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
So,
And the other piece of this is that when you operate outside of fear and step into your truth, then you empower others to do the same.
Yes.
yes.
And we talked about awakening stories, and that's what I'm hoping a lot of people will gain from the stories, is to see that, for example, we have a high-ranking military person who happened to see a crop circle. Do you think she wanted to go around and tell everybody that? Because they probably would have thought she's crazy in that kind of environment. But she was able to eventually tell her story and tell it again in the book. And so that empowers other people to say, hey, I might be in a very conservative environment in my day job or something like that, or people view me a certain way, but I had this experience that's unexplainable.
Right.
And so if I'm too afraid to share that in the right circumstance with people, like you said, not blurt it to the whole world necessarily, but
Yeah.
to share it when it's appropriate. If I'm too afraid, what if that person that you're talking to also had an experience, and the minute you say something, then they can open up and go, oh my gosh, thank gosh, I thought it was just me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that happens so many times.
Yes.
It really does.
Right. In all kinds of situations it happens,
Yeah.
right? That you give somebody else the freedom to do the same. And
The
then you
permission.
realize you're not an anomaly. You're not a unicorn. Lots of people are having this experience. They're just not talking about
That's
it.
right.
yeah.
So stepping out, in courage is wonderful for not only you, but everybody else.
So it's not fun with fear. Well, it is.
It's having fun with fear because you can play around
Yeah.
with this idea. Play around with yourself. Don't you think you can pick
That's for another channel.
Yeah.
pick at yourself? Like, what's the worst that could happen? Be silly about it. Don't be, you know what I mean?
What I'm thinking is the fun with fear is like, move back in that space of joy and love.
Yeah.
And the fear will, like you say, it'll dissipate. It will move to a point where you're not sitting there paralyzed or not acting upon, because when you have that joy, that love inside of you, you're going to act upon it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And the way I look at it, fun with fear is just, it's that moment where you step out of your fear by saying that first thing or taking that first step on your your new journey or whatever, because fear is what's holding you back from taking that first step. Well, have fun with it. Take a step and see where it gets you.
And don't take ourselves so seriously.
Right, right, exactly.
That's what I mean about playing around.
I mean,
and
you
having
guys have been
fun.
watching us for how long now, and you understand. We don't take ourselves all that seriously. I mean, we
Right.
that we laugh, we enjoy, we pick fun at ourselves because that's life.
Or Allison.
Or Allison.
Yeah. One of the things that like makes me nervous sometimes is like when I meet someone, how they'll react to if I say, because they'll say, what do you do? And I say, well,
Oh,
I'm a real estate agent. So, because I'm fearful that if I say I'm a medium, any of that kind of stuff, what they're going to say, because I've gotten lots of blank looks or people just go, okay. And like the conversation stops dead.
You can always just say, I'm a real estate agent by day.
Yeah.
And then leave the door open.
Just leave it. Huh?
Yeah, that'll. But I've learned to play around with it and have fun with
Yeah.
it because, like, the thing is, I don't want to sit and talk to somebody about, like, oh yeah, well, I do real estate too, or I bought a house. Like, I don't want to have that
not the fun.
conversation.
Right.
Yeah, I want to have the conversation of the, ooh, I'm interested
Exactly.
in the woo. That's the conversation I want to spark. And so, like, it's funny because there was a time when Rob, no matter where we went, like, and this especially on a cruise ship, he kept introducing me
Oh, right. I remember
as a
this.
psychic. And oh my God, every time, whoom.
Yeah.
And I said, hun,
Don't do that.
yeah, it's like, do you see we're alienating people? Like even in a hot tub, like
Right.
the moment he said it, then the people just turned to each other and started.
Because they think you can read their mind and they might not be thinking pure thoughts, right? It's so funny when you work in this space, people really
Yeah.
think you can read
Don't-
their energy and know what they're thinking.
I'm not
Some
read-
people can.
I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not one. I don't read your mind.
I have met someone who can, who does, and
Yeah,
talk
I-
about living in fear, like,
It's
because,
disconcerting.
Yeah, we know someone too that
Yeah,
that,
it's
that can read
disconcerting.
right through you, and you're.
but it is a rare
Yeah,
thing.
right. Well, this was fun with fear. If you haven't already done so, check out our anthology, Awakening Stories, which should be by the time this airs, available on Amazon and also through the author's private websites. Check out our 12-week course coming up, The Origin Story. Check out Samantha's course called
Zen Tarot.
Zen Tarot. Any other plugs? Are we good?
No.
I think that's it.
Oh, Christmas is coming up, and so we're going to probably be running some kind of, maybe?
Oh, we will be running a
Probably
special.
running
Yeah.
specials, so we'll make sure that we mention those at some point. We got to think of them. What we're going to do.
We always take these too far ahead, so
Yeah.
if we don't,
Yeah.
we're not telling you, obviously, because we haven't talked about it, but it will be then in the description by the time this airs.
Yeah.
So check that out. Good point, Samantha.
Yeah. Is anyone doing Black Friday deals?
We can.
I do a week of Black Friday deals that I might send you the link to send.
Yeah,
over.
yeah, do that. We might do. We did that once, I think, with our books, or the first,
Oh, yeah, we
the
did.
first 2 books you had out. We might do
It's
that
fun
again.
to do that. I just love
Special
creative
promo
stuff.
code. I think that's what we did last week. We gave a promo code, and
That was for our anniversary.
Oh, was it anniversary? Oh,
Yeah.
see,
Yeah.
Well, that'll be coming up too.
But-
We're actually coming up on.
Well, that's not till April, March or April.
I know, but
think.
we're coming up on episode 100 very quickly.
Are we?
Yes.
That's
Oh,
exciting.
we need to think of something to do for. Oh gosh, I wonder if this is going to be
I
episode
don't know.
100.
I don't know. It
Wow.
might be.
We have a lot
And
of
if it
fun
is, maybe
things
we'll
coming.
put something in the description. We have no idea.
This is as raw as it gets right here.
Yes.
And then
We have no idea who's flying this ship.
our Christmas gift to you is always our blooper reel,
Yep.
which is always fun, I think. And you always.
I'll try to do something
You put
with
these
it.
cool little Christmas theme things in there, and
I'll do something
yeah,
with it.
it'll be fun. It's fun to watch what was happening right before we said welcome,
Exactly.
to see what kind of craziness ensues behind the scenes.
I just wonder how many times, if like, it's almost like, how many jelly beans are in the jar, if somebody could pick that number, how many times you've spoken up, and when you speak up, Will and I are looking this way, and we
we're just
both go,
cracking up.
"Whoop," and we look at you.
Oh, yeah.
No, it's
Yeah.
when we
Oh,
turn
yeah.
in.
Like,
We'll
yeah.
both do it at the same time. And I'm like, I'm so self-conscious of that now. You guys have no idea.
I don't care.
It's funny.
Don't
I try to look at you guys, you beautiful faces out there.
That's right.
Otherwise, she'd
even
be
though
like
we're
a
just
ping
looking at
pong match.
even though we're just looking at
Sometimes I'm in a
ourselves.
ping pong match.
Too
But
funny.
anyway, we appreciate you spending your time with us as always. Go ahead and hit the thumbs up, please, and share and
Please.
like and notification and all the things. And we'll see you next time.
See y'all.
Bye.